It started like any ordinary Monday. A luxury dealership, a confident woman in heels, and a sales manager who glanced up, then dismissed her with a smirk. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't storm out. Instead, she quietly placed a signed acquisition contract on the counter. What he didn't realize was that she wasn't there to buy a car. She was there to buy the entire company. This is not just the story of a black CEO who turned discrimination into disruption. It's the story of what happens when someone stops asking for a seat at the table and builds the table instead. And by the time the cameras stopped rolling, the entire country was watching and learning. Every system has a blind spot, a place where power, pride, and prejudice meet and pretend they're making rational decisions. But sometimes, that blind spot wears heels, carries a leather portfolio, and walks straight into the storm, not to fight, but to own the building. Dr. Selina Moore wasn't new to being underestimated. At 38, she was the founder and CEO of Stratagem Equity, a private capital firm that had quietly funded over 140 high-performance startups and rolled up 4 major acquisitions in the last fiscal year alone. She didn't need attention. She already had power. But on this particular Monday, she needed a car. Not just any car. A vehicle for the new managing partner of Stratagem West, one that aligned with the firm's global image. So she made a stop, casual, unannounced between conference calls, to Clearwater Motors, a luxury dealership tucked into the manicured edges of Brentwood. From the moment she stepped out of her matte gray Porsche Taycan, Selina noticed the glance. Not the kind that admires, the kind that scans, judges, ranks. The valet didn't open the door. The receptionist didn't greet her. And when she asked to see the executive line, she was told politely, but firmly, to check their affordable pre-owned inventory across the highway. Selina didn't argue. She just smiled. What they didn't know was that while she appeared to be shopping for a car, she was actually preparing to buy the entire chain. Not just Clearwater Motors, but every one of the 5 dealerships owned by Marlowe Automotive Group. A move that had been in silent negotiation for months, but she wanted to feel the experience as a customer first. Unfiltered, untitled, unrecognized. And she was documenting everything. As she walked through the glass doors, she was greeted, reluctantly, by Dylan Carr, a mid-level sales manager with a starched collar and a tightly wound confidence. He glanced at her shoes, her skin, her wristwatch, and decided who she was before she said a word. "Can I help you, miss? Looking for a starter sedan?" Selina's smile didn't fade. She simply said, "I'm here to see the new Continental GT." Dylan chuckled. "That starts at $290,000. Most of our clients don't need lectures," Selina interrupted, voice calm. "Just keys." As Dylan fumbled for another way to dismiss her, a young woman nearby began recording. Her name was Jenna Tran, a recent business grad and amateur live streamer who'd recognized Selina instantly. She whispered into her phone, "They're about to regret this." And she was right, because at that moment, Selina received a text from her assistant. Signed and cleared. Acquisition effective in 14 minutes. She didn't say anything. Not yet. She just waited. And what happened next would be witnessed by 180,000 people live, and millions more in the days that followed. The moment power shifts, you rarely hear a sound. No thunder, no drum roll. Just a silence so sharp, it slices through performance and pretense, and leaves only truth behind. At exactly 11:32 a.m., Dr. Selina Moore opened her leather folio, retrieved a single folded document, and placed it silently on the glass-top sales counter at Clearwater Motors. Dylan didn't glance down at first. He was still explaining how certain financial verifications are standard procedure. But when Selina gently tapped the paper with her index finger, his tone faltered. The dealership floor, once buzzing with soft jazz and lowball conversations, suddenly felt still. Jenna's phone stream was now ticking past 62,000 viewers. Selina spoke in the same voice she used during board acquisitions and crisis summits, calm, sharp, and without apology. That document confirms a majority acquisition of Marlowe Automotive Group, signed this morning. As of noon today, I own this dealership, and 4 others. Dylan blinked. You're joking. Selina smiled. I rarely do. You might want to inform your GM before the emails start arriving. Behind her, a security guard straightened his posture. 2 junior sales associates exchanged glances, one mouthing, "Wait, she's the buyer?" Marcus Bellamy, the general manager, emerged moments later. Slow, deliberate, cautious. He'd been emailed earlier that morning by the acquisition firm but hadn't checked. His jaw tightened as he approached. "Ms. Moore," he said, unsure whether to extend a handshake or an apology. Selina offered neither. "You have a culture problem," she said. "Not just here, across every Marlowe showroom." Marcus glanced nervously at Jenna's phone, still live. "Can we speak in my office?" Selina shook her head. "We'll speak here. The disrespect happened here. The correction will too." And then, before anyone could catch their breath, Selina laid out the numbers. 340% increase in discrimination complaints over 2 years. A $2.3 million revenue loss tied to abandoned sales leads, the majority of which were tagged as unqualified prospects. And nearly 18 lawsuits settled quietly by your risk department in the last decade. Marcus looked like someone just kicked open a trapdoor beneath his feet. Selina continued, "I'm not just here to take ownership, I'm here to implement protocol, effective immediately. All client intake is to be reviewed through bias-neutral CRM filters. Staff will undergo external training. Jenna," she turned to the live streamer, "you're welcome to keep filming. We're about to model what accountability looks like." Dylan's voice cracked. "You can't just—" "I can," Selina said, turning to face him directly. "And I have." Jenna's viewer count surged past 180,000. The internet was watching. The culture was shifting. The dealership would never be the same. The room had gone from showroom to stage. Not a stage of triumph, but of exposure. Of consequences that weren't written in press releases, but in posture, silence, and the irreversible weight of truth. Dylan stood frozen. His mouth worked to form words, but the machinery of deflection had finally broken down. Marcus Bellamy, the GM, pulled him aside. They walked toward a corner office, but Selina's voice followed them. "Before you speak off camera, remember, this moment belongs to everyone who's ever been dismissed in one." The tension in the dealership was electric. Employees watched from behind desks. Jenna's live stream exploded with heart emojis, shocked faces, clapping hands. One commenter typed, "He'll never see a name badge the same way again." 5 minutes later, they returned. Marcus was visibly shaken. Dylan, pale, angry, pride in freefall, carried a paper folder in one hand. His voice wavered, but his arrogance hadn't entirely left. "I've decided to resign, effective immediately." Selina looked him in the eye. "No severance, no reference, but this exit will be clean, your choice." He nodded, and for the first time, maybe in years, he had no retort, no subtle smirk, just a reality he couldn't escape. Marcus turned to Selina. "What about me?" Selina considered the question. Then, with the same measured calm she used on Wall Street, "You're on probation. You'll undergo the same training as your team, and you'll lead the monthly accountability forums publicly for 6 months. Your job isn't safe, but your opportunity to grow is." Marcus exhaled, a strange mix of relief and shame softening his shoulders. Selina wasn't there to destroy careers. She was there to change a culture. But the price of staying was reflection, not protection. She looked around the floor. Every customer who walks in deserves dignity before they speak. If that isn't your instinct, it will become your training or your replacement. The silence broke with scattered applause. From staff. From customers. Even the security guard gave a subtle nod. Selina's phone buzzed. An incoming message from Stratagem's legal team. "Press ready. Green light when you're done." She texted back a single word. "Now." Because this story wasn't just hers anymore. It was public property. A case study in what happens when quiet strength meets public ignorance and doesn't blink. By the time Selina stepped outside, the sun was high and the sidewalk already lined with reporters. What started as a quiet acquisition had turned into a public reckoning, and Selina didn't shy from it. In her line of work, silence protects the problem. But transparency? That changes industries. Cameras snapped. Boom mics tilted toward her. And for a split second, the old narrative, the one that whispered, "Be careful, don't rock the boat," brushed her shoulder like a shadow. She stepped forward anyway. "Let me begin by stating clearly," she said into the microphones. "What happened inside Clearwater Motors is not an isolated incident. It's systemic. It's habitual. And as of today, it's under new management." She didn't read from notes. She didn't apologize for making the press uncomfortable. She told the truth. "This morning, I became the majority owner of Marlowe Automotive Group. I did so with full knowledge of its bias history. I did so to show what real equity looks like, not in theory, but in policy." The live stream count passed 250,000. She continued. "Discrimination isn't always loud. Sometimes it sounds like, maybe check the lot across the street. Sometimes it looks like assumptions made before you've said your name." Then she held up a stack of printed complaints, dozens of first-hand accounts from customers over the past 5 years. "This," she said, "is what you get when nobody's watching. And now, the country's watching." She introduced the Morepoint Initiative, a framework designed to train, audit, and reform hiring, customer intake, and internal promotions within every Marlowe dealership. Reporters fired questions. "Do you intend to sue the previous owners?" "No," Selina said. "I intend to outperform them." "Are you planning to expand into other industries?" "I plan to make dignity scalable." She paused, then smiled softly. "The best revenge," she added, "isn't success. It's systemic success, so that no one has to repeat this story just to be seen." By the time she finished, even the skeptics had lowered their pens, because this wasn't a takedown, it was a blueprint. In the business world, transformation often starts in strategy meetings, PowerPoint decks, and boardroom buzzwords, but not here. Selina Moore's transformation began with one rule, printed in bold above every employee entrance at Clearwater Motors. Assume nothing. Ask everything. She didn't fire everyone. That would have been easy. What she did instead was infinitely harder. Retrain the culture. Not with slogans, but with systems. Every employee, from janitorial staff to senior sales consultants, was required to undergo Morepoint Equity Certification, a 6-week immersive training that didn't just cover implicit bias. It walked through active equity, real case studies, simulated interactions, and role reversals designed to rewire instinct. Because, as Selina put it, it's not enough to change the policy. You have to challenge the reflex. The first week was rough. People grumbled. A few quit. One sales rep scoffed, "This isn't what I signed up for." Selina responded, "You didn't sign up for equity, but equity signed up for you." Word spread quickly through the automotive industry. Some competitors mocked the new framework. Others watched closely. A few even requested consulting partnerships. Internally, things began to shift. An older mechanic, Dale, confessed during a workshop that he'd always felt uncomfortable serving Spanish-speaking customers, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to mess up. By the end of the session, he had volunteered to co-lead the Spanish onboarding initiative. That same week, he helped a single mother find a car without needing a translator. In the third week, Selina installed a transparent complaint escalation platform, anonymous submissions, public resolutions. Every Friday, leadership read aloud 3 examples and explained what was done. Applause was rare, but trust was growing. The numbers followed. Customer satisfaction jumped 22% in the first quarter. Employee turnover dropped by half. Reviews began using words like seen, respected, safe. Selina didn't let up. She replaced luxury brand product posters with portraits of real families, Black, Asian, Latinx, disabled, LGBTQ+, who had purchased vehicles after being treated with dignity. She added seating nooks with books and toys for single parents. She even changed the dealership hours to include early morning Saturday service for working-class families. "Access," she said, "isn't a slogan, it's a structure." What once was a showroom built on assumption became a classroom of accountability, and it all traced back to a single interaction. One moment when someone made the mistake of assuming power wore a suit. They forgot. Sometimes power walks in wearing grace. By the end of the second quarter, what happened at Clearwater Motors was no longer a local headline. It was a national template. Business magazines ran features titled "The Moore Point Method." Talk shows invited Selina Moore to speak, not just about her dealership, but about the psychology of bias and the economics of inclusion. But Selina wasn't interested in fame. She was interested in replication. At a summit in Chicago, she presented data that startled economists. 34% increase in quarterly revenue at Clearwater, 47% more returning customers from underserved zip codes, 3 new corporate partnerships from brands that once avoided the Marlowe Group. One executive asked, "How did you do this so fast?" Selina replied, "The question isn't how. It's why it took this long." She didn't advocate for canceling people. She advocated for correcting systems. And as a result, 5 other dealerships in the original Marlowe Group voluntarily adopted her training modules. She renamed the network Moore Point Motors and launched a scholarship for first-generation students entering auto services, finance, or ethics in AI decision systems. The story began to appear in classrooms. At Stanford, her framework was taught in organizational behavior. At Morehouse, it became a case study in business ethics. High school students debated whether customers should have to prove their worth before receiving service, and why that assumption existed in the first place. Meanwhile, a viral tweet of Jenna Tran's livestream resurfaced every few weeks. She walked in for a car. She walked out with the company. And now she's giving others the keys, too. Back at Clearwater, the atmosphere was different. New hires came from non-traditional backgrounds, community colleges, trade apprenticeships, even formerly incarcerated individuals who'd passed Selina's Fairness First assessments. Selina's vision wasn't perfect. There were still mistakes, missteps, but every single one was confronted, not ignored. And slowly, the community changed, not just around the dealership, but because of it. A high school senior whose older brother once left the lot humiliated came back, resume in hand. He was hired. A retired teacher who'd stopped driving after a humiliating experience returned and left in a new car, gifted anonymously by a Moore Point staffer. This was no longer about a single transaction gone wrong. This was about what's possible when justice is no longer reactive. It's built in. It came in a plain white envelope. No return address, no letterhead. Just a single folded note left on Selina Moore's desk one quiet Friday evening. She almost ignored it until she saw the handwriting. It was from Dylan Carr, the man who once told her to try the used lot across the street had sent a letter. Not a demand, not a defense, a confession. I've been watching from afar. The stories, the changes, the people walking in that I never thought would be buyers. Turns out they weren't just customers. I was the one who didn't qualify. I failed the test, the one no one ever gave me until you walked in. Selina stared at the words, not because they surprised her, but because they reminded her that redemption doesn't always knock. Sometimes it mails itself in quietly, hoping you'll read past the shame. I've started over, Dylan wrote, working part-time, studying mediation and bias response training. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to thank you for showing me what leadership actually looks like. Not loud, just undeniable. Selina folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer marked Impact. Inside were dozens of other messages, from staff, from customers, from kids who'd watched the live stream and decided to write essays about equity for college applications. One stood out, a crayon drawing from a second grader named Aaliyah. It showed a smiling woman in a blue dress holding a car key, surrounded by a rainbow-colored crowd. The caption, "This lady helps everyone get a turn." Selina placed it beside Dylan's letter. And later that month, when she took the stage to speak at the National Auto Retail Conference, she didn't open with numbers. She opened with a question. What if success wasn't measured by units sold, but by dignity delivered? The room hushed. She continued, "Every one of you has likely dismissed someone you thought wasn't your customer. I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to offer you the map I built after someone tried to dismiss me. You don't have to fail to learn, but you do have to be willing to unlearn." There were no standing ovations that day, just quiet reflection. And afterward, one by one, executives approached. Some asked for training modules, others for strategy help. But one woman, older, in a simple pantsuit, just said, "My granddaughter saw your story. She wants to run a dealership now. She says she's going to call it Even Ground." Selina smiled. Because legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what others stand on to reach farther. It's early morning. Selina Moore stands at the edge of a rooftop parking lot, coffee in hand, the skyline of Los Angeles unfolding beneath a rising sun. She's not dressed for a press event. No tailored suit, no designer heels. Just jeans, sneakers, and a navy windbreaker bearing a small embroidered logo, Moore Point. Behind her, a convoy of electric vehicles, quiet, gleaming, accessible, prepares for delivery to a fleet of non-profit orgs serving underfunded school districts. Her company's latest initiative, Keys Without Bias, a program that places dignified transportation into the hands of community educators, caregivers, and mentors often overlooked by traditional financing models. But for Selina, this isn't the victory. The victory happened long before. It happened the day a woman walked into a luxury dealership, got dismissed, and stayed. The day she didn't raise her voice to claim power, but lowered the temperature so others could witness its quiet, deliberate form. It happened the moment she chose not just to fight the system, but to buy it and rebuild it from the studs up. And every time someone stepped into a Moorepoint showroom, looked around, and felt seen, that too was the win. Later that day, Selina visits a small training center her company helped fund. It's called the Even Ground Institute, named after a child's drawing once left on her desk. Inside, young interns, diverse in every sense, learn not just sales strategies, but systems thinking, cultural empathy, and the history of equity in American business. One of them, a soft-spoken teen named Jaden, asks her, "Do you ever get tired of being the person who has to fix it?" Selina pauses, looks him in the eye. "Every day," she admits. "But I'd rather be tired from building something better than rested in a world that stays broken." He nods slowly, like those words may live in him for a long time. Outside, the wind picks up slightly. Selina's coat flutters as she looks out across the lot. A father walks in holding his daughter's hand. An older man with a cane is escorted to a new model with ease. No one is ignored. No one is asked to prove they belong. Because now, belonging is the baseline. And as the sun sets, Selina's team gathers to debrief. Not about numbers, but about people. They laugh, reflect, plan. The mood isn't one of corporate conquest. It's one of quiet confidence. Because when power is wielded with humility and vision, it doesn't just defend dignity. It multiplies it. The moral of Selina Moore's story isn't just about racism or classism. It's about the cost of assumptions and the compound power of confronting them with strategy instead of rage, with intelligence instead of ego, and with ownership instead of opposition. Because when you own the space that once excluded you, you don't just rewrite your story. You rewrite the rules.